So turn to Proverbs a minute. Proverbs chapter 25. Proverbs is a really cool. We're going to Esther, but there's only 10 verses in Esther. I mean, that'll only take me 2 minutes to get through, so just kidding. But some of these Proverbs line up exactly with what we're talking about. The cool thing about Proverbs is you can relate them to your life, and you can see how it. When we read this story, Mordecai and Esther and Haman's about to meet his doom tonight. Not literally tonight, but as we read the story. And you'll see all of these things play out in this story. Proverbs chapter 25, let's look at verse 15. Patience can persuade a prince, and soft speech can break bones. Patience can persuade a prince, and soft speech can break bones. You're going to see soft speech with Esther. You're going to see how she could have come in. You're going to see how she does come in. Patience can persuade a prince, and soft speech can break bones. In other words, there's power. There's a time for soft speech. Sometimes it's hard to give a soft speech, right? Esther could have been panicking. Esther could have been, all messed up. But she goes, we'll see how she goes and enters again to the king with the king. Look at Proverbs 25:27. It's not good to eat too much honey. All right? Well, there you go. There's your medical lesson for the evening. It's not good to eat too much honey. Notice it doesn't say desserts. It just says honey. So I don't know what the difference is. But here's the relevant part for what we're going to say. And it's not good to what? It's not good to seek honors for yourself. Remember what Jesus told them? Don't be the guy that puts himself at the front and then has the embarrassment of what? The person that puts themselves in the front and the people like, what are you doing here? You're not worthy of this. Get back. Rather, he says, be the person at the back. Right, that's what it is, yeah. It's the person who wants all the glory. Be the person at the back who is asked to go to the front. That's a great honor and privilege in that. But you'll see it with Haman, right? If anyone teaches you it's not good to seek honor for yourself, guess what? Haman does it. Haman's been seeking honor for himself, and we're going to see tonight. And look, sometimes it takes a while for it to play out, right? For a while, again, it looks like Haman's winning. It looks like Haman's getting his way. When he gets invited to this VIP party with the king and Esther and him, he thinks he's one of the special ones. He thinks life is grand. And tonight we're going to see what happens. But again, when you say it's not good to seek honor for yourself, sometimes it seems like that works. Sometimes people are seeking honors for themselves, and they seem to be gaining from it. But the Bible's never wrong. It's always right, and in time you'll see it's not good to seek honor for yourself. And by the way, every one of us is prone to that, right? Every one of us has a flesh. Every one of us has that kind of selfish ammo, that pride, that we seek honor for ourselves. That's why you get your feelings hurt when no one recognizes. But if you don't think you struggle with that, do something that you think is worthy of a thank you, or worthy of a, some kind of praise, or some kind of reward, or some kind of recognition, and don't get it. And you'll see that it probably at some point bothers you, right? So we all want honor for ourselves in some way or form. We fight that at least. Look at Proverbs 26:27. This is a really important one. You ever seen people get mad and they just go off the rails? And they set traps. You've probably had traps set for you. And people set traps and they tried to catch people. People tried to catch you out by asking you a question. People tried to catch you out by putting you in a situation. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You understand that the enemy's always laying traps for us, right? But sometimes other people lay a trap. Or I'm going to ask them that to get them to say, that's why taking interviews, even as a politician, would be difficult, because you're always leery that someone's setting you a trap. If you set a trap for others, listen to this, and tell me this doesn't happen in Esther. If you set a trap for others, what does the Bible say? You'll get caught in it yourself. When you try to disarm someone, when you try and come against somebody, how many people have made schemes, even in church or outside of church, at work, in your family? They set traps. They try and come. They try and destroy. They try and bring down. And yet it ends up not messing the people up. It ends up messing who up? The people who lay the trap are the ones who get hurt. They're the ones who pay a price. Haman laid this trap. Haman lays this big old gallows to hang Mordecai, and guess who dies in it? Haman's a perfect example. If you roll a boulder down on others, think about this. If you roll a boulder down on others, if you come at people, if you roll a boulder down on others, it will crush you instead. So what have we learned? Don't eat too much honey. Don't roll boulders. Don't set traps. What? Yeah. Yeah, because you might fall down it. Proverbs 27:2. Let someone else what? Let someone else praise you, not your own mouth. How many of us, does anyone say I've never gone against that proverb? Proverb 27:2. Let someone else praise you. Why are we not comfortable with that? They may what? They may miss something, right? They may not praise you enough. I mean, that's what the Bible, let someone else praise you. Now, again, that doesn't mean, everyone's praise. If everyone starts to praise you, you're going to have to watch yourself too, right? Let someone else praise you, not your own mouth. A stranger, not your own lips. Don't be prideful. Don't be boastful. Don't praise yourself with your own mouth, not your own lips. We all struggle with that, right? I mean, we've all struggled with that. Look at 2 Corinthians a minute. 2 Corinthians chapter 10. Proverbs is an interesting book. You'll smile, you'll laugh, you'll get convicted. It's a pretty cool thing. Paul was expert at this. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 17. As the scriptures say, if you want to boast, boast only about who? About the Lord. What does he say in Galatians? If I'm going to boast anything, I boast about nothing except Christ and him what? And his cross and him being crucified. If you want to boast, boast only about the Lord. How many of us fail that every day? Yeah, me, I do. What do we boast about? Have you ever noticed what you boast about? Most people don't care. I mean, the gifts, and we said this morning, everything comes from who? Right, so it's really the Lord's, right? So if anyone deserves the credit, you ever start telling the story and you realize the room's not interested in your story? It's kind of humbling, right? We boast about all of this stuff that we think people are interested in, and guess what? They're really not. I always go back to Margaret Thatcher. She said, if you have to go around telling everyone you're a lady, you're probably not. Think about that. It's kind of more appropriate to this generation, right? We don't know what a lady is anymore. But her point was, if you have to tell people you're something, guess what? I mean, if you are that, you should be what? I mean, if you're kind, you don't have to tell people, I'm kind. It'll just what? I mean, if you're mean, mean people don't have to say I'm mean. It'll just what? Rich people are pretty easy to, some hide it well, but most don't. I mean, if you are, it'll come out, right? You don't have to say it. It's like if we're godly, it'll come out. You don't have to tell people how godly you are. And we do that, pastors can do that in subtle ways. Oh, I was up at 3 a.m. studying. Well, great, that's awesome. All right. We can say stuff, right? We say stuff to kind of lure you in. We tell a story in a way that makes who the hero? Us. And it at least makes you think something like, for instance, you play in a tournament that's only 3 people. You're like, well, I was third. You just don't tell them there's only 3 people, right? I mean, there's ways of spinning a story, right? Until they ask you how many people, and then it's like, I've never done that. Anyway, let's move on. Verse 18, when people commend themselves, it doesn't count for much. Listen to this. The important thing is for the Lord to commend them. Think about that. How much is people's praise worth? And how much does that change? But it says when people commend themselves, it doesn't count for what? When you pat yourself on the back, it doesn't count for very much. The important thing is for the Lord to commend them. That's what life is. That's the greatest reward. If the Lord commends us, what's better than that? And by the way, the people who praise you, they don't know you. How much praise do you think people would give you if they knew you like the Lord knew you? Every thought, every action, every motive, everything. But it says, let the Lord commend you. You know what you have to do in that? You have to let him do it. And why, let's ask this, and you can answer it. Why is it difficult to let the Lord commend you? Why is that such a challenge? That should be easy, right? What is it we struggle with in that? If we're like, look, I don't need man's praise. I'm going to get the praise of the Lord. I'm just going to let him see it. I don't have to fight that. I don't have to argue. I don't have to tell him my side of the story. He already knows. The Lord, if we're doing right, the Lord will commend us. Why is that so difficult for us to do? That's part of it. It's not immediate. What else? You have to wait. What did you say? Yeah, that gets uncomfortable. What else? Why is that like, hey, I need the Lord to commend this? Some of it's eternal, right? To your point, you have to wait. Some of it's not till when? Till the end, right? But here's the other part of that. Sometimes we know people will praise us, but the Lord knows everything. He knows our motives. The Lord won't commend us for some things that other people will commend us for. Let's be honest, has someone ever commended you for something that you really know you don't deserve that? You know, something happened when people ask me to, when I can, I don't do it all the time because there's going to be someone like, you didn't do that, I get it. Like, I don't do it all the time. But most of the time when someone says, will you pray for this? I try and do it right then. Because the worst feeling in the world is like, I'll pray for that. And then they come back and they're like, hey, Pastor, thanks for praying for me. Yeah, about that. People commend you because they think something, but the Lord knows the exact what. The Lord's never said, hey, Pastor, thanks for praying. Oh, wait, you didn't. Let him commend you. He knows, he's the, you know, when he commends you, it's right. When he commends you, he's seen everything. Man, there's a blessing in that. Proverbs 25, I should have done this before. Let's go back to Proverbs. Proverbs 25, one more. Proverbs 25 and verse 14. We tend to put our hope in people or our plans. Listen to how many times have you seen this? A person who promises a gift. How many people have promised you something and not come through on it? Now, why don't they come through on it? Well, that's a quick, easy answer. They're human. But what causes you to promise a gift and then not deliver it? Sometimes it's just a lie. Some people lie to you. They promise you a gift and they know full well what? Right. Other times, why? What else causes you to promise a gift and it doesn't happen? What do you mean by that? I hadn't thought about that. That's good. They're acting like they're doing you a favor, but they're doing themselves a favor. Yeah, that's a good. I hadn't thought about that. Give yourself a star, Mickey. There's our chairman of the deacons right there. Look at that. That's awesome. But why else do we do it? Sometimes we think we can deliver it, and then we find out what. And we meant it. We meant to deliver a gift. We promised you, and then you ever done that with your kid? You promised them a Christmas gift, and then the economy, you lose your job, or whatever. And you're like, you promised. Yeah, like, I wish I hadn't promised that. Sometimes it is a promise, but we don't give it. That's why, again, it's hard to trust people's promises. It's hard to trust a politician's promise. Right? I mean, imagine if you believe every promise you're hearing at the moment. How disappointed do you think you're going to be? On both sides. A person who promises a gift but doesn't give it is like clouds and wind that bring no rain. It looks good. It looks like they're going to, and in the end, it delivers what? That really means in West Texas, it's so dry. I mean, I've never prayed for rain before. You don't pray for, if you prayed for rain in Britain, they'd slap you like, we don't need no more rain. Like, I've never heard anyone pray for rain in Britain. I've heard praying like, please stop. No one, I'm sure there has been. I have never heard a prayer for rain in Britain. But when I got to Odessa, they were, and so many times they're like, if they said it's going to rain, what's the percent? If it wasn't like 100%, it wasn't coming. It's 80%. Oh, it's going to be 95 degrees and sunny. Just don't worry about it. It's not raining. So many times it got dark, and you're like, man, we're going to get rain, and guess what? Nothing. And the Bible says a promise, a gift, but doesn't give it, is like clouds and wind that bring no rain. Remember last week we were talking about Mordecai and how well he was, and whether he was praised or whether he wasn't, he kept going. And because I think he saw, like, the Lord never makes a promise that he doesn't give it. And we spend our whole lives chasing promises that are like clouds and winds that eventually, I mean, think about your life right now. How many promises have you bought that look like clouds and wind? Refreshing, useful, needed, timely. And in the end, you bought into this and it brought absolutely what? It's that will change my life. It's that will help me. It's this person who's going to make the difference. And in the end, no rain. And we have to look and think, man, all of these promises, and we'll see this come out. Remember in Psalm 73, I won't read it, but go home and read Psalm 73, that famous Psalm of Asaph, and how he struggled with how are evil people getting their way, how are prideful people winning. They boast against the heavens, he says, and their words are struck throughout the earth, and man, everything seems easy. Look, in verse 12 of Psalm 73, he says, wicked people enjoy a life of ease while their riches multiply. And did I keep my heart pure for nothing? And yet he says, if I'd really spoken that way, I would have been a traitor. It's hard to look at life sometimes and think someone's not winning. He looks at the evil people and he says they're winning. And yet then he goes to the sanctuary and his perspective changes. And I say all that because in Esther, for several chapters, which we pointed out last time, it looks like Haman's winning. If you knew nothing about this story, you would swear Haman was winning. And Esther is in trouble, and Mordecai is in trouble, and all of these things. And Mordecai is going to die, and yet God has it. Thankfully, Haman, when he promises death, thankfully he is a cloud. He is this person who promises much and delivers. He's like the school bully that threatens, and then when he comes down to it, he can't do anything. The devil, by the way, is the chief honorary member of Proverbs 25:14. If anyone tells you they can deliver and doesn't, it's Satan. Think about how the lake of fire will be laced with that. You promised me clouds and rain, and I got hell. Think about what does the devil promise lost people? And yet in the end, there will be no rain, no help, no grace, no mercy. The devil's the king of it. If you want to see a shady salesman, it's Satan himself. He promises all the world, all the stuff. And it's not that he can't deliver some things. In the end, he delivers absolutely what? It's not like you can say, well, I went with the devil and at least we got some wins. No. In the end, the devil will give you absolutely. Think about that. And you haven't paid for it with you. Imagine paying a lot of money and getting nothing. You've paid your life. Think about the tragedy of hell. I gave my life for a cause. I gave my life for an ideology. I gave my life for you, the devil. I gave my life away. And what I ended up with was absolutely nothing. It's the exact opposite. I strive to give my life away. And now I've gained absolutely everything. That's the difference. All right, with that as a background, Esther chapter 7. Now I'm never going to get through Esther. But we got weeks to play with, so I'm good. Esther chapter 7. Remember his wife and his friends in the last bit of chapter 6 have said, Mordecai is a Jew. You'll never succeed in your plans. But pride keeps promising you clouds and rain. Pride keeps saying you're the man. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. Remember, this is banquet number 2. On the second occasion, while they were drinking wine, here's that picture again. Haman is about to die, and you see him what? You're drinking wine. You remember what Jesus said about Noah's day? What was happening right before the ark was closed? They were eating, they were partying, and they were drinking. And then the rain came. Uh-oh. I mean, this picture, Esther's there, she's calm. The king's kind of clueless, although he knows, he's like, okay, what do you really want? He knows something's up. And Mordecai, pride, sometimes, man, pride blinds you, right? He's about to find out. There's a moment here where he knows he's in trouble, and we'll get to that. But think throughout the book. Haman has come, and Haman has been messed up because Mordecai wouldn't worship him, and God has worked all this out. And until these kind of moments, you think, man, and remember, Mordecai has had to tell Esther, don't get freaked out. This is your time. If you don't do it, someone else will. But this is your time to save your people. For such a time as this, God has called you. Have some guts, stand. And she does. So they're drinking wine, and the king said to Esther, tell me what you want, Queen Esther. What is your request? I'll give it to you even if it's half the kingdom. I said it last time, I'll say it again. I don't know how much of a thorn that was to her, but imagine being promised half the kingdom. It could put you off what you really want, couldn't it? Hey, I'm here to save, she's here to save her life. But how many people would risk their life for half a kingdom? How many people would go to a king with a noble and holy thing and be promised half a kingdom and kind of, oh, hold on, what? I mean, imagine going to the president and saying, we need to sort out, abortion or something, and him saying, well, whatever you're here for, I'll give you half of my riches. Well, I did come to talk about abortion, but now you say that. I'm just saying it's a temptation, right? Temptation that she obviously is all right with. But he says, what's your request? I will give it to you even if it is half the kingdom. What would happen if Queen Esther got half his kingdom? That would be like the rain and the clouds promising much and delivering what? Queen Esther replied, and this is, remember I started with what was it? A peaceful, a quiet answer. If I have found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request. Here it comes. And if this is a TV show, the music's coming. Here we go. We want to know what she wants, right? She's already had a banquet and kept quiet about it. This is banquet number 2, and she's about to spill it. If I have found favor with the king, there's kind of a humility there. There's kind of a playing on the king a little bit. If I have found favor with the king, and by the way, God gave her nothing but what? God has given her favor ever since she's been there. God has given favor to Esther. And if it pleases the king to grant my request, and here's the bombshell. What he's about to find out, he never knew. I've married who? I've married a Jewish lady. If I found favor, remember that Mordecai has said he's Jewish, but he's told Esther what? Keep it quiet. That's a whole thing. If I found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. He's gone from offering half the kingdom to having a party, so to speak, with 3 people, drinking wine, and now the queen, not some like reprobate, his wife, the queen, says, somebody wants my life and the life of my people. And she says, all I want is for that to be what? What to be spared. Here's the problem. What's the problem? Why is that such, in human terms, why is that a difficult request? Well, more than that, but what in Esther, yeah, that's true, but what in Esther is really a problem? Remember when the Medes and Persians signed something into writing, what happened? They could not reverse it. They couldn't reverse. So what have they done? Remember what Haman got the king to do? He got to sign into law that a year from then he would what? They would go and they were allowed to who? They were allowed to annihilate the Jews, and who got the stuff? Here we go. Here's all this empty promises again. Who got the stuff? Everyone who killed them did. Listen, go back to Esther chapter 3 a minute. Esther chapter 3 and verse 12. On April the 17th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and a decree was written exactly as who dictated it? Oh, see, Haman's a man, right? Haman's dictating laws now. Haman's getting his way, so it seems. It was sent to the king's highest officers, the governors of the respective provinces, and the nobles of each province in their own scripts and languages. Remember, he had 27 provinces, right? So this is major. He said, the decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. Here it is. When it's sealed with the king's signet ring, that means it's what? It's irrevocable. It cannot be changed. Dispatches were sent with swift messengers into all the province of the empire, giving order. Listen to what the order is. Listen to what they can't change. How many Jews? All of them. All Jews, young and what? So who's included in that? Esther is. Mordecai, who he's just praised, who had saved his life, Mordecai is included. He signed into edict things that he doesn't want to kill Mordecai. He doesn't want to kill Esther, but he's been rash. He was kind of aloof from things. He's allowed Haman to kind of trick him. Look at what it says. Young, old, including women and children, must be what? Listen to what it says so you understand Esther. It's not that they be mistreated or their stuff taken. They must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated. On what? On a single day. This is clearly warfare. This is clearly the devil. We talked about that. It was scheduled to happen. God's good. If it had happened that day, God could have done it. But God delays it a year. You know why? Because he's going to work it all out. And on March the 7th, so you've gone from April to March, almost a year. The next year, the property of the Jews would be given to those. Here we go. Here's what I'm telling you. Remember, I just told you that if you were offered half the kingdom, you might get a bit crazy. How do they think they're going to kill Jews? There's no way someone can kill all the Jews in all the provinces. So what are they going to do? They're going to ask their people to kill the Jews. Because in every province, there'll be people who kill Jews. But here's the thing. Here's what I'm telling you. What is the carrot? What is it that they inspire to kill? It's not because look, the Jews are all living with them. I know there's always been a hatred toward Jews and stuff, but there's not this uprising against Jewish people in these provinces. They've all been all right. I mean, in fact, here's what I tell you. They could have gone back to Babylon. I mean, from Babylon. They could have gone from Babylon took over. Remember, 70 years come. They could have gone back to Jerusalem, but they what? What does that tell you? The Jews kind of liked it. Listen, they should have gone, I believe they should have gone to Jerusalem. But they didn't. After 70 years of oppression, they stayed. They stayed. What is the carrot that they offer? Hey, Nick, go and kill the Jews. And whatever stuff they have, it's yours. That's not half the kingdom. And by the way, all means what? Okay, so who's that including? Rich Jews and... Okay, so who's going to kill the poor Jew that can't even give them nothing? Someone's got to kill him. So who kills the poor Jew? Probably the hater, right? You can inspire hate pretty quick. But somebody's got to kill the Jew, and if the payment is you can have their stuff, well, what do you do with the Jew who has nothing? I mean, if some of the Jews are rich, there'll be all kinds of sign-up sheet for that. But look at what it says. The property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. Even Haman isn't what? Haman is willing to give away his money, and Haman is willing to give away the prizes, the spoils, because all he wants to do is kill what? He wants to kill Mordecai. And he is willing to kill all the Jews just to get rid of who? It's been done before. Kill all the babies. Kill all of them. Why? Because they really wanted to try and get at Jesus. It's obviously warfare. So, all right, so go back to chapter 7. Here's the problem. It's been signed. So when you're reading the story, you think, well, this is done. Right? It's over. But with God, it's never over, right? And we'll see how God goes around this problem. If I found favor, verse 3, with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. She's talking about that edict. And for my people and I have been sold to those, listen to that, been sold. They've been sold. Haman has sold them out. The devil's trying to sell them. And by the way, what do the Jews get out of this? Absolutely nothing. But we have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. In other words, the devil has this plan, and she tells her husband, there is a plan in place to kill, to slaughter, and to annihilate my people. And before he says it's no big deal, he realizes what? This is what he signed. There's no way out of this, humanly speaking. How would you feel as a Jew? And by the way, it's not like tomorrow, it's almost a year. For a year, you've got to think about what? Remember what happened in 127 provinces? It got written in every language so that every province understood, so that nobody was out of the loop. Every province, imagine that. Imagine if it happened here. In 1 year, every Christian will die. Well, imagine that. And by the way, before we think we're too different, how many people would kill Christians for their stuff? You better hope you don't have it. That's when it's really good to be poor. I mean, think about how much the church is valued at with buildings and land and all that. You think someone would shudder twice to get rid of us, to get all of our stuff? That's how wicked men are. That's how the devil... See, again, get the money, right? Get the stuff. Think about that. Think about the promise of the devil. Kill God's people, you'll get their stuff. What does he not tell you? Kill God's people and you'll get wrath. Not the wrath of the people you're killing, the wrath of a holy God. See, the devil's very good at enticing you, but he doesn't quite tell you all of what? The whole story. If we admit, listen to what Esther says, and this is kind of interesting. If we had been just sold as slaves, by the way, they've been in Babylon, right? If they'd been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet. Like if this was just a slavery thing, the Jews have got pretty good at slavery, right? They've been at it after this, Hitler did that. But Egypt has enslaved them. Babylon has enslaved them. Assyria took the northern kingdom. They're used to slavery. If it had just been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet. Esther's like, look, if this wasn't that big a deal, it is a big deal, but no, I could remain quiet. For that would be too trivial a matter to warrant disturbing the king. If it was just slavery, I wouldn't be here. And then verse 5. This shows you how aloof the king is. Who would do such a thing? King Xerxes demanded. The room temperature. Remember who's in the room? Who's in the room? The king, Esther, and Haman. You ever had a sense in a room that everything's good and then somebody says or does something and you're like, this is going south quick? I mean, you ever been at a board meeting or a staff meeting or a whatever kind of meeting and you're like, woo, this is awesome. And then something happens, you're like, ooh, this went south. Haman has been happy so far. And that's what Asaph was saying in Psalm 73. How come Haman's getting away with it, God? How come people like Haman get what they want? Oh, wait, just wait. Who would be so presumptuous as to touch you? The king, listen, the king's very proud. Remember how proud he was of his first wife? He tried to get her to parade herself and she wouldn't, Vashti. That's a big deal. Even if the king, I think the king did actually honor and respect and love Esther. But even if he didn't really love his wife, he isn't going to let anyone else what? Yeah. He ain't going to let anyone. There's a reason he had eunuchs. No one's touching the queen. Like, no matter how bad he feels about Esther, if you touch the queen, guess what? You ever been upset at someone in your family, but then someone tries to mess with them? You will still defend them to the what? Because it's your family. Listen, has anyone ever told you, look, I can joke about that, right? I feel like that, right? I can joke about Tasha. I don't mean it. I know what I'm saying. Right? Yeah, but if someone else does, ooh. like, well, you make fun of it. Yeah, well, that's different. Who would be so presumptuous? And that's a perfect word for Haman, presumptuous. And look, the world's presumptuous. Because Jesus hasn't shown up yet, they think he's what? They think he's not coming. And that's what Peter says. You think he ain't coming, don't you? But he's being very patient. He's not willing that any should suffer. But one day he's what? One day he's coming. Sin's very presumptuous, right? Sin presumes to, why? Sin, that's a whole nother sermon. But sin is very presumptuous in so many ways. Verse 6, Esther replied. Here it is. Is she going to have the guts to say it? Esther replied, how does it, she isn't meek in this moment. She's meek with the king, but she doesn't mince her words here, does she? She doesn't say, my buddy Haman. How does she describe him? This adversary, this one says, this wicked Haman, is our adversary and our enemy. Okay, whose adversary and enemy is he? Haman. Think about it. Who? If you said this is Haman's enemy, who is Haman against? And who else? Well, Mordecai, Jews, but who else? Who's a bigger picture? Esther, keep going, bigger. Keep going. Yes, we got there in the end. Think about it. Haman is the adversary and the enemy of God. He's coming against, if you come against the Jews, you're coming against. If you come against the church, you're coming against. Moses said, guys, when you come at me, you're not coming at me. You're coming at God. All right? So think about that. This wicked Haman is our adversary and our enemy. Woo. Haman, what does it say? Haman grew what? Pale. You ever seen the life drain out of someone? Listen, have you ever known someone that they said something and you said something back and their face gave them away? You know it. You know it. Their face what? You ever been in a heated discussion with your wife and she says something and you're like, ooh, you got me. He grows pale. Why does he grow pale? He knows it's the truth. Yeah. Well, and who's he scared of? Yeah, but that's not who he really should be scared of. He's scared of the king. You know who he should be scared of? And if he had a godly fear of the Lord, you know what he would have done? Got on his knees and repented. And he could have been saved. But he doesn't. And by the way, whether it's like this or whether it's facing death or whether it's really, really difficult times, if you're lost, how do you not grow pale? And I don't mean physically, but how do you not deal with that tension? If you don't have Jesus, what's to stop you when they say the economy? That's why people go nuts about the economy. Because if you don't have Jesus, the economy is something big to you. You realize, right, the economy can tank when we're okay. If we're basing our stuff on the economy, God help all of us. The economy can come and go. Our God's still what? Look, you've got to understand why lost people act and think the way they do. The economy's big to them because that's what they have. Right? Power's big to them because that's what they have. Haman. Haman grew pale with fright before the king and the queen. I love this. Queen Esther has been there. She's waited her time. She's been through all of this stuff. God's taken her on this amazing journey. She's been threatened with execution. And that hasn't been healed yet. Listen, remember I keep telling you, say thank you before it happens. There's nothing happened. Nothing has changed. But if Esther was kind of concerned going in, when she looks at Haman, what do you think she thinks? I believe in that moment she knows she wins. Haman's got nothing. Haman's got nothing. Now, it's one thing killing Haman, but it's not, see, Esther's different. Esther doesn't really need Haman to die. She needs what? She needs the Jews not to die. If she has a choice between you can kill Haman, but you're going to die, or we'll not bother about Haman and we'll keep the Jews, that's a no-brainer. But I think have you ever had a moment where in circumstances and situations, you know you've won and nothing's changed, but you know you've won? God spoke, God's done something. You're like, oh, this is over. I mean, I've got no proof it's over. Nothing has really happened yet, but it's over. And the enemy is suddenly, the person that you were afraid of is shown to be what? I mean, listen. When someone's bullying you and they get scared, you know it's what? Oh, this has turned a corner. Look at what it says. This wicked Haman is our adversary and our enemy. Haman grew pale with fright before the king and the queen. And the king jumped to his feet in a what? Okay, now why is he so angry? Why is he so angry? There you go. That's part of his issue. Not only is someone coming after his wife, and by the way, they were worried when a queen stood up and was counted, right? Imagine if you let someone kill your wife. But he's upset that Haman played him for what? Haman played him for a fool. And this plan is now like, bing, bing, bing. Oh, when you're the king and you're proud, what do you not want to say? What are politicians not very good at saying? Two things. I'm sorry, and it was my fault. I mean, you can throw all the evidence at them, tell them, here's a soundbite, you were wrong. They still won't say it. Because they think if they say I'm wrong, they'll lose votes. Actually, if they said they were wrong, they might gain votes. But imagine being part of this plot, inadvertently even, that's going to kill your wife. Sorry, honey, made a mistake. He goes mental. And he goes away into, and this is kind of funny. Remember where all the party was? Oh, they were all having this party, and everything was good, and the gardens were decorated. He's now at his palace. He's now at this same place, and he goes out into the palace garden. Okay. You find it difficult to control your temper, as I do, with the Holy Spirit. Imagine what it's like for a pagan king. See, the devil's messing with fire when he's playing with this. Look at what it says. Haman's whole demeanor has changed. I've told you all through Esther, it looks like God's like, where are you? What are you doing? Esther, man, you're going to die. In Esther, that earlier chapter I just read, like, oh, the Jews are done. It's dead. We're done. Look at what it says. Haman stayed behind to plead for his life. With who? Oh, the tables have turned, ain't they? Haman is begging for his life. Oh, how the mighty have what? Fallen. For he knew that the king intended to what? His only hope is Esther. His only hope would be Esther put in a good word. Well, fat chance of that. Verse 8. Listen to this. God's timing is what? This is not coincidence. This isn't like, look. In despair, he fell on the couch where Queen Esther was reclining. So check this out. Queen Esther is reclining on a couch, and he falls prostrate in despair because he's begging for his what? He's a nervous, crying wreck. He isn't trying to mess with, in fact, listen, messing with Esther right now would be your worst move. She's your only hope, right? So the king is going to think he's trying to harm Esther. But actually, that would be the stupidest thing you've ever done. I mean, if the king's going to kill you, then why not mess with his wife? That seems like a really good idea, right? But you see, sometimes circumstances have a way. If you'll just let God do it, he's brilliant at it. Like, if Mordecai and Esther had tried to coerce this plan, they couldn't coerce it. But God is amazing. Look at God's timing. This is absolutely amazing. Haman grows pale. He's got frightened. The king goes out. He falls on the couch where Queen Esther happened to be reclining. And he falls when? He doesn't fall. This is how sovereign God is. The king's gone out. The king has to go out. And the king has to come back. Guess who guided the king leaving? God did. And guess who guided the king coming in? At just the right moment, as Haman falls on the couch, who walks in? You ever been caught in a situation that looks really bad that was totally innocent, but it's like the wrong timing? It's like, man, this looks What does it look like to you? What would it look like to anybody? Haman is wicked. Just when the king was returning from the palace garden, the king exclaimed, will he even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very what? He thinks he's coming after his queen, whether it's like physically or sexually or whatever. He thinks you're... If the king was mad before and knew Haman had taken him for a ride, how mad is somebody that thinks, I left and now you're trying it on with my wife? How much... Haman couldn't have made a worse move. Yeah. I mean, if he... it's off the chart mad now. But this, do you see how this is God? Like, do you see how in chapter 7 it's easy to thank God, but it's in chapter 2 and 3 when it looks bad that we really should have been thanking him? Here's what I'm telling you. Can anybody ever kill all the Jews? No. It's biblically impossible for Israel to be totally done. Like forever. Like there's no descent. No one else can be Jewish. We killed them all. You know why? If that happens, you know what you can do with this? Just throw it away. Yeah. Yeah, the promise has been from the beginning. The promises are still to come for Israel. Listen, God cannot get rid of, even if God wouldn't, but even if God could change his mind, he can't. He can't get rid of Israel now. When God says something, guess what? God didn't have to do anything with Israel. God owed Israel nothing. But when God sovereignly chose them and said, it's you, and I'm going to do it through you, and it's through Abraham, and through you, all the descent, and he chose to become Jewish and all that, then guess what? He has to hold to it now. Hitler was never going to wipe out all the Jews. Ever. Does that mean they won't get hurt? Yeah, of course, it was horrible. But God's bringing all this together. And look at what it says. The king exclaimed, will you even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very eyes? And this is, you know what happened? A king couldn't look at a condemned man. Now think about this. When you were found guilty, they covered your face. It's like the king was too prim and proper, too high. You were like nothing. When you were condemned of a crime, the king wouldn't look at you. Look what happens. And as soon as the king spoke, his attendants, have been watching this, right? So they're in the room too. His attendants covered Haman's eyes. Why? Signaling his doom. When Haman's face gets covered, it's pretty clear that God's winning this, right? Now remember, this isn't Haman versus the king. This isn't Esther versus the king. Who is this? This is God versus the devil. And up to Esther chapter 7, maybe you could read this and think, ooh, this is a close fight. You ever watch boxing? It seems like someone's going to win, and then all of a sudden one punch, and that's that. Bye-bye. And God's delivered this hammer blow. Yeah, it takes him a while sometimes. Haman had his face covered. Verse 9. Then Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, how many people bowed to Haman? Everybody, but who? Don't trust in people. You know how quickly, listen to this, you know how quickly the praise of man will change? Wait, if everyone was bowing to Haman, who was bowing to him? The eunuchs were, right? And how quick did they turn on him? You trust in people, they'll turn on you pretty quick, right? Oh, I got that in the bag. They'll never betray me. Be careful. People are very... Why do you think people in politics or whatever get bribed? Because they can turn pretty what? You ever had someone turn on you pretty quick? That hurts, right? I thought we were friends. Like, I expect them to turn. I mean, that's not a big deal. But you? Judas turning on Jesus. Jesus knew it, but that's pretty rank. Look at what it says. The king's eunuch said, Haman, and by the way, Haman needs some friend. He needs anybody, and he's got absolutely what? And where's the devil to help him? But where's the devil? When you need him, where's the devil? You've given your life to the devil. You've fought for evil. You're trying to kill the Jews. You're a pawn in the devil's hand. What solace can he take? Like, as he sits there with his head covered, what can he say? Well, at least Satan's going to do this for me. What is it? Absolutely nothing. See, even when we die, God's going to do a whole lot, right? If this was a Christian having his face covered because he's going to die, do you know, here's the difference. How much hope did Haman have when his face got covered? But if we're martyred for the cause, you know how much hope we have? And that's when we expect Jesus to deliver, and he will. The king's eunuch said, Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. In his own. Remember what proverb I told you? Roll a boulder and it'll what? The thing that he said, this would only be there. It's only there because Haman what? Haman put it there. Haman started to roll the boulder. And guess what? The boulder's going to crush him. Don't, like what you said, Pat, don't dig a pit. You might find yourself. Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. He intended to use it to impale Mordecai. Oh, now, you ever found people that tell the truth a bit late? Thanks for now. Yeah, that's great. You couldn't have said that earlier. They knew. He intended to impale Mordecai, the man who, and listen to this, the man who saved the king from his assassination. Oh, they're really going to bat for Mordecai now. Then impale who? Impale Haman on it, the king ordered. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai. And the king's anger what? Now, if Esther stopped there, what would you be asking? Esther can't stop there. Why? Because there's still a massive bit of the story. What's the massive bit of the story that we've got to learn? There you go. Because that edict cannot be reversed. And so God's going to show you. I mean, this is how he's got rid of Haman, but Haman doesn't fulfill everything. They've got to now, in chapter 8, mine says a decree to help the Jews. So what's going to happen is they're going to, well, I'll tell you that next week. Don't read ahead. No, I'm just kidding. You can if you want. But if you don't, it'll be more exciting. Does anyone have any questions, any thoughts? It's a really cool story, isn't it? And God's going to work it all out. And by the way, Mordecai is this brilliant character. How much has Mordecai fought for himself? And he ends up being prime minister. Yeah, because he didn't manipulate. And like I told you, when he wasn't recognized, he served. When he was recognized, he jumped back out, started serving again. He's a pretty amazing character. I didn't understand him at first, but he's really amazing by the end of it. Go ahead, Nick. What were you going to say?